Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Classic X-Men number 6, and the focus is on the backup story, which is entitled A Love Story, featuring Jean Grey prominently, as well as Scott Summers, and looming over them there on the back cover is a sentinel, which is of course the expression of human fear and hatred of mutants with a genocidal focus. And so that tender moment between the lovers in the street spotlight has this ominous tone to it by virtue of the grim, stony-faced sentinel watching them from above and preparing to strike and annihilate them. So the back cover is, of course, by John Bolton, and it is penciled and inked by him. It is quite clear to me that he's just using a brush for the inking on this, no crowquill pen or any other tool than an ink brush, and I think it's a very effective piece. I think it would work just as well in black and white as in colour, but the colour does add a particular dimension with the classic colours of the Sentinels, in particular that magenta purple of their helmeted faces. So let's take a look at the front cover to this issue of Classic X-Men. This reprints Uncanny X-Men number 98, and there is a reimagined cover by Arthur Adams, inked by P. Craig Russell. And you can see the cover date for this particular issue of Classic X-Men is February 1987. And one last thing to note is the difference between Arthur Adams' version of the Sentinels and John Bolton's. And I think that Bolton's is just altogether more menacing in that particular illustration. So on the inside front cover, we get the credits. And Chris Claremont is writer, of course, of the backup story. John Bolton, penciler, inker, letterer Tom Orzechowski, and colorist Glynis Oliver. And there's also an inside cover spot illustration of Scott and Jean dancing there. Pencils by Arthur Adams and inks by P. Craig Russell. So there is that famous splash page from Uncanny X-Men number 98. The X-Men are in Manhattan and enjoying the Christmas period. It's a time for love, and the X-Men are right in the thick of it, declares Claremont's third-person narrator. But of course, it all goes very wrong with the Sentinel attack. And at the end of the issue, the X-Men end up in space and in great peril. As you can see there, they're not on Earth at all. They're out in the vacuum of space above the Earth. But before that famous Christmas night, Jean Grey was getting ready for her date with Scott Summers. And we have now Chris Claremont, almost 10 years later, writing the story of Jean's preparations for that date. So here's our opening page of the 12-page backup story, the title of it there, A Love Story. And interesting opening. So we have a top-down view of a Manhattan city street. It's snowing. There's snow and slush on the roadway. And we have 3 panels here. A top-down view of Jean Grey walking home to the apartment that she shares with Misty Knight in this time period. And then we get a close-up on her face and that slight little enigmatic smile. So she's been out grocery shopping. What she bought there, we can see there's 2 bottles of alcohol. We'll see precisely what they are subsequently. But what a great opening. Really, really well done by Bolton. Atmospheric. It really establishes the midwinter setting for this love story. So let's continue. Turn the page and look at this. There is no narrative captions. There are no narrative captions. There are no speech balloons, no thought balloons. This is a silent story. Really, really intriguing. So John Bolton's visuals are doing all the storytelling. There's a little bit of incidental lettering, such as this Kavanagh's New York grocery bag that Jean has been toting her groceries in back to her apartment. But I really like the storytelling here, where she's leaning up against the door there, uses her telekinesis to hold the grocery bags aloft, turns the key in the lock, heads up the stairs. It looks like she's running up the stairs, arrives into her apartment. Notice this candelabra here, or candle holder for 2 white candles. We'll see that again later in the story too. So Bolton spends a lot of time establishing the layout and contents, the fixtures and fittings of Jean and Misty Knight's apartment. So here in one of the grocery bags was a couple of bottles of champagne, and they whiz around with their telekinesis into the various points that she wants to put them. And then the clock strikes 6. So it's 6 p.m. And there's a poster on the wall, a kind of a humorous poster. Mutants, bunch of weirdos who got the nerve to be born different from the rest of us. Slobs with powers and abilities far beyond those of normal men. Telekinesis, how those weirdos throw things around without using their hands or feet or any physical part of their body. It's all in their minds, which is what we're seeing here, of course. And finally, telepathy, how they read your minds, assuming, of course, you have one. And then the clock strikes 6, as I said, and Jean knows she's got to get a move on. So off goes her top, and she runs towards the bathroom. Let's see, continue with the story. And then she's in her bath, her foaming bath, with a top-down view there, and then the clock strikes 6:30. So she spent half an hour in the tub. She's out in her dressing gown with a towel wrapped around her hair. She's looking at a photo here of herself and Misty Knight putting up the wallpaper in the apartment, and there's a note under the picture, and it's this: "As agreed, Jeannie, I'm gone for the weekend. Go for broke. Love, your roommate, Misty. P.S. Scott phoned, said he'd be by to pick you up at 7:30. Be ready, be rude, be happy. It'll be great." So Misty encouraging her roommate there for this date, this Christmas date. And then Jean looking around the apartment. So there's flowers there. She's levitating a notebook. And then she reads the notebook, which turns out to be a diary, switching on the lamp there. So it's December 21st. She's having her date with Scott, dinner plus. And then we've got the ellipsis and the question marks. So we're going to see where this is going as we continue with the story. There is a photo propped on the desk too, and it's of Scott, and it's signed by him with "All my love, Scott." So she touches that tenderly, puts on some music with her telekinesis, and pulls together a clothes simulacrum of Scott Summers, including his ruby quartz glasses. So there must be a pair of them kept in her apartment too for any emergencies. There's that candelabra again on this divider wall between the kitchen and the living room, I suppose we'd call it. So she's created this kind of simulacrum of Scott, and what's she going to do with the music on? Go for a little dance. And she rests her head on the shoulder of the jumper there as well, and kind of waltzes with him. And the clock is going because time is ticking on, and Scott's going to be picking her up at 7:30. So up the stairs she goes into her bedroom, and look at the poster on the wall, of course, behind the bed, "The Phoenix on the Carpet" by E. Nesbit. So E. Nesbit, this is the author of 5 Children and It, and this was the sequel to that children's story. It came out in 1904 as a novel. And of course, it's portentous in terms of what is going to happen to Jean Grey after the date and the shuttle flight and the crash and her sacrifice of herself to save her teammates, and the Phoenix Force reaching out to her too. So she knows none of this, but she's pensive in the bedroom. She sits down on the bed. There's a family portrait of her with her parents there as a teenage girl. And what does she do? She puts it into the drawer and leans back on the bed, because of course, this is so interesting. Like, if you were a 10-year-old reader of this in late 1986, when this was on the stands, you wouldn't know what the significance of this was. But of course, as an older reader, perhaps one who read Uncanny X-Men 98 originally in the late 70s, and then picked this up for the backup stories and extra materials in 1986, 1987. Like if you were 10 in 1977, you'd be 20 in 1987, and you would know well what the implication of this is, that Jean is putting away a picture of her teenage self as she prepares or hopes maybe to, as it's euphemistically put, become a woman tonight with Scott on that double bed. So let's turn the page. So she's thinking there. She opens the wardrobe. What's she going to wear for her date? And she's got two options, two contrasting options: virginal white or dark and sexy black. So she's there contemplating the black dress. She's contemplating the white one. Time is ticking on. It's 5 to 7, or rather it's 7 o'clock. And then she's looking in her vanity mirror, wondering what to do, which choice to make. So here, I love this device of the split panel here, where we see the smile on her in her eyes, but also on her mouth as well. She's made her decision, and it is 7:30. So Scott is there. He's ringing the doorbell to the apartment. She opens it. There he is, dressed as he was at the opening of Uncanny X-Men 98. So he's got his winter coat on, his gloves on, hair brushed. And let's turn the page. And she has chosen the black dress, of course, with the necklace, and looking very, very fetching there. For any readers who might have fancied Jean Grey, she looks incredibly fetching in that particular panel by John Bolton. Really has a talent for conveying beauty and grace in female figures in particular. And of course, Scott, the romantic, has a rose for her, a red rose. They kiss. He leans right into that kiss. It's a passionate one, but she tells him to wait a moment. She grabs her fur-lined coat, and as she leaves the apartment, sets those candles alight for later, for return. So she's determined to bring him back to the apartment. They're out on the snowy street. It's nighttime. They're going to make their way into the city to meet the X-Men at the Rockefeller Center. And you can see she's using her telekinesis there to keep them dry from the falling snow. And that could be the end of it, but it's not. Let's turn the page. Last page. Page 12 of the story. So we see here the room is waiting, the bedroom is waiting, but there is an explosion, and the glass of the bedroom window shatters, and the force of the explosion knocks the lamp onto the bed, but also the photo portrait of Scott and Jean embracing there that she'd placed above her bedside locker. And we see through the broken window the Sentinel taking off over the city. And so the room is left in darkness, but there's a flash of light, and it's intriguing. It seems to be from the painting or the poster for the children's novel. And of course the title there is The Phoenix and the Carpet, but our final panel is just on the Phoenix. And that's what awaits young Jean Grey, so hopeful on this night to become a woman. Little did she know that she would in effect die and be reborn by joining with the Phoenix Force. So really, really great stuff. I mean, in Marvel continuity 1986, with the publication of X Factor, the original Jean Grey is back, having returned to continuity via a retcon of John Byrne's in Fantastic Four number 286, where it was revealed that this young lady was protected by the Phoenix and put into a cocoon on the bottom of Jamaica Bay. And she is the one that emerges from that after I'm trying to remember exactly Fantastic Four 286, whether the Fantastic Four have a hand or not in discovering that cocoon, but in any case, that brings this Jean Grey back into Marvel Universe continuity. So yeah, this is a really, really intriguing story. Wordless, Words are not needed. Claremont had a reputation as being an incredibly wordy author. And really you see here that when he's confident of his artistic collaborators, such as John Bolton, he's fully prepared to forego any words and let the expressive, delicate, well thought out art do the talking. And this is the kind of story that just stands up over time. In particular, this is a classic. And yeah, really impressed with this. Quiet moments, Jean Grey, young woman, hoping to consummate her love with her teenage, like since they were with the X-Men originally, X-Men #1, got to know each other at the age of 16. They're adults now, 20, 21 years old, and looking to consummate that relationship, truly in love with Scott. And then how it all goes wrong and all goes dark and into the Dark Phoenix saga ultimately and her death on the moon. But then the twist, the retcon twist by John Byrne and Jim Shooter and so on and so forth. But really well done by Claremont and Bolton. Fantastic storytelling. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comment section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.